We should take these two unions more seriously and follow their examples, argues JOE HAYNS. Try not to scratch the Ferraris, a United Voices of the World UVW activist told the crowd. Freddy and Angelica were suspended for demanding a livable wage for cleaning a West London car showroom, but, after several UVWorganised protests over the last month, the bosses are presumably now less scared for the cars than they are of their workers. UVW and its sibling union, the Independent Workers Union iwgb, both organizing in the most precarious workplaces, among majority migrant workers, have had a great year. A high point was the coordination of iwgb's University of London branch's strike with UVW's cleaners' dispute against the London School of Economics (LSE) in mid-May. They're working together, and it's time the wider labour movement thinks again how to relate to their campaigns. If an independent union is recruiting, organizing and taking the fight to bosses in our workplaces and sector, our first question should be how we can support our brothers and sisters because of our shared principles of collective self-improvement and solidarity across the working class. Even rhetorical solidarity can have an enormous effect. UVW cleaners campaign at the LSE began in January this year. After week-in, week-out strikes and very noisy protests, the union announced victory on June 20. Cleaners were brought in-house, with 41 days leave and 6 months on sick pay. At first, other unions' campus branches did not get involved, and this seemed partly since UVW was not only rocking the boat, it was doing so with members that ought to be in other unions. One iwgb officer reports that they get along with most other unions' activists at branch level. We go to each other's pickets. But we've been told that sometimes leadership gets in the way, and, even and in some cases, that branches feel intimidated from working with us. These are serious charges, and thank you, there are counter-examples. The University and College Union UCU pledged support for UVW cleaners in late May. Soon the UCU LSE branch did the same after pressure from its PROV members. LSE management was already on its back foot, and the prospect of cross-union solidarity forced a retreat. UVW and iwgb aren't just fighting, their members are winning. Freddy and Angelica reinstated, with the living wage. Cleaners at the LSE, the best paid cleaners, with the best conditions, in the country. And iwgb's ongoing campaigns with Deliveroo bicycle couriers, Uber drivers, and University of London security officers are all showing that traditionally non-unionized workforces are not only organizable, they're providing a model to follow, and in two ways. Striking is getting harder, and national-scale unions are having to reconsider how they organize. Theresa May's Trade Union Act came into effect on May 4 last year, and immediately changed how UVW fought the LSE dispute, with the act forcing unions to nominate an officer as picket supervisor, and even inform the local police of their own strike days. The act also decreased how long a union can strike after a successful vote by 50%, from 9 to 6 months, but it increased by 100% the time bosses have to prepare, call-in bank staff prepare their press offensive, from 1 to 2 weeks. The act wasn't designed to hurt those much smaller unions, though May's demand for a minimum 50% turnout, and a simple majority voting yes to strike action, won't much affect either the UVW or iwgb, which tend to get both very high turnouts and yes votes. But bigger unions, struck with far lower numbers before the act and not getting those raised quorums, will be demoralizing, and reballoting, demobilizing. Labour's election manifesto promised to repeal May's act, but the Tories might last, somehow, until 2020, and even if they don't, and Corbyn makes good on his promise, we'll only have gone backwards, not forwards. Unlike the bosses, the Tories, and even remaining tendencies within the Labour Party, we actually want far more than a 50% turnout, and CWU's recent, high turnout yes vote shows that the hard work of organising the rank and file is possible. More than ever, it's necessary, too. UVW's branch meetings are packed, deliberative, educating, and what happens before and after is crucial to building comradeship, too, with weekly English classes and joint IWBG-UVW parties building, in their own way, a sense of power and of collective struggle. As one prominent UVW officer told me, workers will only take action if they trust each other, people will only take action if they trust each other. I think trust comes from social activity. You feel stronger bonds with someone you've socialized with, rather than someone you've met once in a meeting. Trying to create that courage, those bonds of trust, especially in this sector, is vital. Smaller unions tend to be democratic, and so more dynamic, but our unions are ours to remake, with over-bureaucratization a tendency, not a law. Those bonds of trust, so crucial to strike action, come from below, and that at where UVW and iwgb's very scrappy, highly successful campaigns start. The act also forces us to remember that strikes aren't the only tactic available to us, and, again, iwgb and UVW both provide a model. Activists in the national unions know the power of protests, of course, but there has been a vivaciousness and an aggression about how the iwgb and UVW organize over the past while that's worth noting. As it turned out, no Ferraris were harmed in that campaign, but both unions have been damaging profits across London with similarly protest-heavy efforts over the last period. Harrods had been taking 75% of its workers' tips. But after UVW's traffic-stopping protests in early January, workers were soon getting 100%, with the difference equivalent to around £5,000 per worker per year, as UVW says. UVW's protests there weren't polite. There were systems, shouting s, stopped cars, angry police, risks taken, and even a UVW officer arrested. The charges were dropped, of course, and that's how UVW won. No, not every firm has to as jealously protect its reputation as Harrods. Yes, national-scale unions like BETU and its picture house workers are already using mixed tactics. But UVW and iwgb's consistent combining of strikes with high-intensity direct actions is something that larger unions, from the branch level upwards, would enormously benefit from, especially after May's 2016 act. As anyone who's been on picket knows, words of support and solidarity from other trade unionists and the wider working class are an enormous boost. You know you're not alone. Those words matter, but it can't end there. UVW and iwgb will need rhetorical, financial and organizational support from the labor movement at the branch, regional, and national levels. And if not from us, then who? And it's not just that bigger unions have something to give these smaller ones, either. These newcomers, organizing the putatively unorganizable, are showing how to win for workers in contemporary Britain. We need to follow, for their sake and the wider labor movement's. Related tags.